Hey everybody, it's Brian Burns. Welcome to this episode of Sales Questions. Here's one. It's kind of more of a career job questions, but it really applies differently to salespeople than it does to pretty much any other industry. And the question is, should I jump? Should I go to this other job that's a higher position? And what should I consider? Now, when giving job advice, please take it solely as advice. Always listen to other people, but never solely act on other people's advice. Too often, I've gotten kind of overambitious when people were obviously making a dumb move or making a super risky move. I express my opinion too much. And in other cases, I've kept my mouth shut, and I've seen people make mistakes. And a lot of times, let's face it, none of us know what the future holds. And I've made some good career decisions, and I've made some bad career decisions. And hopefully you can learn from some of mine, because these are critical moves, because all we have is time. And if we make a bonehead move, and it's an obvious bonehead move, then we have to pay the penalty. And that penalty is not just in money, it's in that time, because we're never going to get that year back. You can make the money back. You can't get the time back. And that's what's critical. Always exchange money for time if it's less expensive than what you make. It's the simplest entrepreneurial approach that you should be paying attention to, because the world is always going to have space for B players, but in sales, it's at the top end that gets all the commission. Now, what should you evaluate when you're looking to make a change? One is, are you ready? Are you really mentally ready? Do you have your skills, your game, or are you just getting your feet underneath you? Big mistake I see a lot of people doing is going from one bad situation to another, going from one B job to another B job. And that, it gets you that 9-month honeymoon phase of, getting started and ramping up, but it doesn't really move you forward. Now, you also have to understand in sales, do you want to become a manager and work the organization up, or do you want to be a rep? And that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother question. Today, with this, what we used to call inside sales, we now call business development or sales development rep, you want to get out of that as soon as you can if you're money motivated, because the money there is okay, but it's capped in a lot of ways. May not be capped physically on your comp plan, but it's capped just in activity. Because as soon as you become super good at it, they cut your territory down. And you don't get the super upside of huge deals. And it's the hardest part of the job, really. It's the most grinding, the most demotivating part of the job. Lots of rejection. So one is, first, is it the right industry? Now, people kind of float around in their career, and they go as soon as somebody calls them up, because a sales manager, when he gets a rec, all of a sudden he gets the quota for it, and he gets desperate. He or she gets desperate, and they lower their standards, as opposed to when they don't have a requisition or a head count approved. They take their time. And you see this a lot during the recessions. A lot of you haven't lived through one, but this is the model during a recession, is that managers will always interview people. And a lot of my friends were recruiters and headhunters. And, they'd be like, I don't know if this guy really has an opening or if he's just trying to meet and network with people. And it's kind of cruel, because the headhunters and the recruiters, they work on contingency, commission only. So it's like you hanging around with a realtor all day, and you're not in the market to buy a house. Yeah, if I find a house that's 20% under market, I may consider buying it. Well, that doesn't really exist very often, unless there's some life event, someone dies or divorce or something like that would cause somebody to accept below market rate. So number one is industry. Is it the right industry? Is the industry growing? Is it expanding? Why? Because the industry is like a wave, like the economy is a wave. Like right now, there's super low unemployment. So a lot of B and C players can get B and A jobs because there's openings, because everyone's hiring. And the downside of the sales development rep revolution that's kind of like gone mad a little now is that they look at you as a cog in the wheel, which brings up another point. I should do a whole episode on it, that just because you are employed by the company doesn't make it that you're going to be treated like an employee. Now, I should do this separately, but it's something that you critically have to understand, because once you've been in sales for 3 to 5 years, you kind of get the sense, well, no other department has like this 9-month trial. And some companies even say it will give you 90 days. And then you're a full employee, which has no meaning. You're a full employee the first day. In the U.S., it's called, at will. At will means that you can quit any time without warning, and they can fire you at any time without warning or cause. Doesn't mean you have to do anything wrong. And a lot of people have this misunderstanding that they're legally bound to do something for you. And I'm not a lawyer, but at will is just search for it on the interwebs, and you'll see exactly you have pretty much little to no rights. You know, they can, as they have no rights towards you if you decide to go somewhere else. Everybody's a free agent. My point here is that this falls into my reasoning behind the salespreneur concept. The beauty is you get a great base salary. You get a nice, cool or warm place to go. You get a desk or a laptop and all this stuff as long as you work there. It's a nice little safety net. But it's not like you're in accounting or in marketing where you're guaranteed to have that place every time. So number one, find the industry, because you get the economic wave, which we have no control over, very tiny, minuscule influence. And then you have the industry wave. Now, is the industry peaked? Is it just starting? Has it already crashed? And you can make money at all of these stages, but it's easier and fits better into a career if it's just about, it's formed and you're right about to get on your surfboard as it comes up behind you and you time it well. Now, if you get on it after it crashes, it washes out a lot of people. And, some people can still make money at it. I've had people on the podcast that literally started at a company that I thought was finished. And essentially they were, and he's been there 18 years since I thought they were finished. But in software, they can buy other companies, they can get acquired by companies, there's existing accounts, there's transition, and some people can survive in that environment. I was always probably a little too early. I was probably, the wave is just forming. And you can get the sense of where that industry is. I would say look at companies. If the company's like under $1 million, it's just a garage idea, startup. And it doesn't mean it's bad. It could be good, but it matters how well you fit into that environment. Now, if every company in the space is that small, that wave hasn't really formed yet. And if you're patient, that can play out. And again, this all depends on your skills, abilities, and patience. Now, sometimes the wave never forms at all, or somebody else comes out and just crashes it and blows it away. So one is the industry. Evaluate the industry, see where it is. If it's already crashed, then you've got to kind of be a cog in the wheel type of person, a patient person, the type of person that, if one quarter is a washout, it's okay. The next one's coming. If you're the wave forming person and you can go out and create a vision for people, and you're patient that maybe in 2 to 3 to 5 years you're going to be the expert in that space. And that's kind of how I ended up happening. Is I tried to keep finding the next wave, and a couple of times I hit it. Most of the time I was too early. One company I was probably late at, but there's always ways to make money. Okay, the key point is to get into a good industry. Now, I'll give you an idea of what I think are, good industries are growing, where venture capital is being spent, where hiring, where you very rarely see layoffs. And then you kind of start to see the maturing, the consolidations phase, where the companies get bought up by the big players, and the big players start looking at that industry, and it becomes mature. Now, the problem there is then you tend to work for a big company. And I was at a tiny startup that got bought by this huge company. And I had a good 3-year run there. It wasn't fun, but I made a lot of money. And, should I have left? And I had a lot of offers to leave. But I was kind of ready to make my transition to go out on my own. It was time for me. I had written my book, and I had started the podcast, and I was itching to do something else, do it for me. My story was I was sick of, building something up, and then someone else could just put 5 reps in my territory, or, if a manager didn't like me, he'd freeze me out. And I'm like, I built this. I spent 3 years building this. And now, I've got money in the bank, but I didn't have the real equity. I had tiny percentage of the company, but I didn't have the company. And I loved that idea. I was financing a company on the side, and I loved the idea of having that asset. And because I realized that our whole society is set up for entrepreneurship, at least here in the U.S. And to not take advantage of it is a little misguiding. Now, when you should take advantage of it is when you are skilled enough and have enough of a bank account and runway and skill set to take advantage of it. A lot of people, especially today, it's very popular to go take advantage of it before you're ready. And the problem there is you end up working your butt off for pretty much little to nothing. And because it takes years. It doesn't take quarters like it does when you're in something that already is built. A $3 to $5 million company, they've been around for a while. They either got financing or they have some traction, have existing customers, have a reputation, have somebody in marketing, and you don't have to do all that. You just have to get new accounts. So number 1 is industry, number 2 is company, number 3 is manager. Now, do you jive with that manager? And I've taken jobs where I didn't jive with the manager. In one case, I not only didn't like the manager, I had interviewed with him before, and even the headhunter had said he's kind of a buffoon. And I call it my 9/11 job. It was basically I had been in at a hot startup right before that. 9/11 came, and there were no sales jobs. And the hot startup, it was, the wave had not even, it was just a bunch of foam out in the ocean, but it was well financed. And I got a good percentage of the company. But I knew it was going to take 2 or 3 years. And now with 9/11, it was going to take 5 years to get this thing going. And the leadership of the company thought it was a lot better than it was. And nothing ever came of it. The $50 million was raised, and I think they sold for scrap. And so I was right about it. But then going into this next one, me and the manager, we never clicked. He was really an accountant by trade, had no talent as a sales rep, and, had no real judgment skills of people. And it was just kind of a miserable 2.5 years of my life. I did well. I did okay. But it kind of gave me, a lot of grit and it was just hard because, I had made a huge investment outside of it. The stock market was in the toilet. The market was in the toilet. So I didn't have much choice. But let's say if in the same case, I had a great manager in a company that wasn't as good or a product that wasn't as good, that might have been better because you got quality of life. A great manager will take care of you, will protect you, won't, F you over on the territory of the comp plan. They're going to have to do some of that every year, no matter what. Companies have to grow. And companies don't like the idea of one person making half of the commission. We have to get used to it. We can play around with it as much as we want, which brings up my next point. Does the comp plan make sense? Does that territory have enough pipeline, customers, referrals, references, of a network, an ecosystem already built, or do you have to build it from scratch? I got a buddy of mine now who's at not really a startup, but a big company that has no traction in his territory, and his territory is a laggard territory. It's a long-term, much more of a business development territory than it is a commission quarterly territory. And, he's struggling with that. And so he's going to work his butt off for his base salary, build up a pipeline for the person who's going to get it after him. Because guess what's going to happen? After a year and a half, they're going to look at it and they're going to say, oh, you got a pipeline, but, very little closed. And this is what we have to think about. If you were hired to take over a country like Brazil or Argentina and you had no context within that company, there was no install base, the documentation for the product isn't in their native language. All of these things take time. So this is kind of my long-winded answer to this question is think through these things in that order. Because if it's not the right industry, forget it right off the top. It just doesn't make sense to go into a laggard industry that you're not familiar with. If you're in an industry that you want to get out of, then you can make compromises. The company, make sure the company is at the right stage for you and it fits where you want to go. Next is the manager. Do you jive with the manager? Is that manager connecting with you as a human being, or do they look at you as just one of the dogs pulling the sled to get whipped? If it's the latter, it's just a job. It's like evaluate it and make your decision, but know it going in. Talk to people who have worked for that person before. Is there anybody on that staff that has worked for the person before? Are there personal connections with any of those reps? That happens a lot. If it's you, you want it. If it's someone else, you don't want it. Number 5 is the comp plan. Make sure the comp plan is competitive and gets you what you want. I hope this has been helpful. Please connect up with me on LinkedIn. Check out everything at b2brevenue.com. Check out the show notes. We've got great stuff. The coupon code for both nudge.ai to get a month free, as well as pipedrive.com is Brutal Truth, all one word, no space in between. And check out my LinkedIn page. I've got a webinar coming up July 12th. I'm not sure when you're listening to this, but if you happen to see it. If you don't, check it out. I'll put it up on my YouTube channel, Brian Burns on YouTube, and it'll be there for you. Keep the questions coming. Appreciate your time.